pop out, have a look how the garden's doing, and you'll have a real shock. During the night, the wild pigs have been at it and ruined your flowers, eaten what they could, and off they've gone, and you don't hear them. Most of the houses here, you have the roller shutters, and that blocks out, of course. Most houses, or practically all houses, don't have air conditioning, so in the hot weather it keeps the heat out, in the cold weather it keeps the heat in, and it blocks off a lot of noise so you don't hear them, and you'll have a real shock that your beautiful garden has been overturned. Many golf courses have been ruined during the night times, and the wood soccer pitches. They're not the wood, sorry, the lawn soccer pitches are a favourite with the wild boar. Why are they suddenly doing this? Well, as I mentioned, we have a lot of oak trees, and the wild boar, they love acorns, and they rummage around in the ground, rummage for acorns, but this gives them a kind of acid in their stomachs, and to neutralise that they have to rummage around a lot more for worms and bugs in the forest, and unfortunately we've been told not enough of those worms and bugs, so that's why they're going for people's gardens, golf courses, or the soccer lawns. See here they have it on some areas, they have the fencing in an effort to keep everything, the wildlife, off the roads. Wolves were reintroduced a few years ago. They were extinct for many years. We now have around 30 packs. A couple are in this forest as well. This is the extension of the forest, the Frankfurt forest. The Frankfurt city has its own forest. But bears, the brown bears, were officially here the last time at the end of the 1800s. Although it's only a matter of time before we have them back here again, where they're already in Poland, Czech Republic. So they only have to sneak over the border with or without a visa. Although I do have a funny story about Bruno the bear a couple of years ago. He did sneak into the Bavarian forest from the Czech Republic and was causing everybody a merry dance. Now, the bear was supposed to be tranquilised and taken back to the Czech Republic, but no one could spy him long enough to shoot any cartridges, and that would put him to sleep so that they could load him onto something and take him back to the Czech Republic. And he was leading all the hunters a merry dance. People were getting very nervous down in the Bavarian forest because they'd come out one morning and bins would be unturned and garden would be looking dishevelled, and they were all terrified. They'd walk out one day and this great big bear would be standing in front of them. It was such news that they named him Bruno the Bear, and after the real news on the hour, they used to tell us what Bruno the Bear was up to down in the Bavarian forest. It was hilarious. They had bear experts flown in from all over the world to get this bear tranquilised. But in the end, poor Bruno, he wasn't tranquilised. I don't know why. He was shot. Bruno was shot, but he can still be seen today. They had him stuffed. Bruno was stuffed, and he can still be seen in one of the museums in the Munich area. But that's the story about poor Bruno. But it was hilarious, always hearing about after the most important world news. We heard what Bruno was doing down in the Bavarian forest. We started also to drive past farmland. We mostly have grain crops in these parts. Also in the when we're driving back to the Ede, we'll be going on country roads. Also grain crops. We do see some livestock, or we did see a flock of sheep. But mostly the dairy herd herds, the larger dairy herds, much further south. On the border to Austria, we also have large dairy herds in North Germany or in the east, and the very, very large farms, or what we call the large farms, are still in the eastern part of Germany. That's where they were when Germany was still divided. They were always in the eastern part. That's where the cooperatives used to be. The forest now coming up on the right, this is known as the Spessart, or the woodpecker forest. And you will have all have heard of it. You think you don't, but you will have, because I'm sure as a child you were read to, or you read yourself, the fairy tales from the Brothers Grimm. And the Brothers Grimm were born, we just saw a sign for the town of Hanau. The Brothers Grimm were born and brought up in Hanau, and they took great inspiration from the woodpecker forest for their fairy tales. Especially one of them, we all remember Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. There used to be low mineral mines in the Spessart, in the woodpecker forest, so you had to be small to work in them. That's where they got their idea of the dwarfs. Also this year we have an abundance of hay. In fact, the farmers, I think some of them are already on their third hay making procedure.
That's good.
And here on the sign here on the right we have the how many minutes it is to the next junctions. Says 11 minutes to the Frankfurt junction, that's the busiest in Europe. And we also have another 13 minutes until we reach Frankfurt International. So you will be seeing planes in the sky. Frankfurt International, I think it's the third busiest in Europe. So they are harvesting already.
120.
Nowadays, farmland worked on by one or two larger farmers, but this wasn't always the case. In the country areas and also in the villages just outside the big cities, most of the families, they still owned a few acres of land, had some livestock. This went on right up until, I'd say, the end of the 1980s, beginning of the 1990s. So the men, they had two jobs, their regular work, also the part-time farmers, but at the end of the 1980s, the very small farmers, I'm talking about 20 to 25 acres of land, really looked in and calculated, are costs being covered, am I making any profit, realised no costs weren't being covered. By the time you bought the seed and you planted it, fertiliser and anything to do with farming is labour intensive. If you haven't got all the very expensive equipment, all the children had to help. They weren't always too enthused about it. Machinery, as I also said, very expensive to buy and also to maintain if you can't do it yourself. So many of the smaller farmers, they sold out to the larger ones. Now just to live off of farming, you'll need about 500 acres. And then all those barns and stables that were no longer needed, most of the farmhouses were or still are integrated into the little towns, little villages themselves. The The ones that you see on the open land, they're mostly newer farmers, the organic farmers. And then you didn't need the barns, you didn't need the stables, they were converted into living accommodation or for garages. Used to be families only had one car, now depending how old the children are, you might have 3 or 4. Is the temperature still okay for everybody on the coach?
Ja, cool. It's a little cool.
In the front. Okay. Vorne is ein bisschen kalt. Vorne. Now I've got a thumbs up.
Okay.
Vorne. Okay, so just put it up for you here in the front. Yeah, it's cool. We're in now. This is called the Rhine-Main Metropole region. As I said, we have Frankfurt International a few minutes from here. It's one of the largest employers. Over 80,000 people work at Frankfurt International. Frankfurt itself, there's only a 2-second window where you do see some of the skyline when we change onto the freeway number 5 or motorway Autobahn number 5. But on a normal working day, Around 800,000 people work in Frankfurt. Normal working day, that number doubles. So anything to do with finance will be in Frankfurt. That is the financial capital of Germany. All the banks have their headquarters there. It's the seat of the European Central Bank, the German Federal Bank, the National Audit Office. Anything to do with banking, that would be Frankfurt. Also, the leading stock exchange in Germany is also at Frankfurt. You either love or hate the city. We spent 15 years there, as I mentioned earlier on. I came from London in January of 1980 to start work at Frankfurt, and we loved it there. Had a great time. Then we moved to other cities and finally to the countryside. We're now living back where my husband originally came from, now that his parents are getting a bit older. But we had a great time in Frankfurt. Also very well known for its trade fairs. The trade fairs have been going on in Frankfurt since medieval times. One that's known throughout the world is the motor show. And also the book show, the book exhibition trade fair that's worldwide renowned. Frankfurt. Very busy junction up ahead, the Frankfurt junction, but should be okay today as it is the holiday period. After 5 minutes. Yeah. We'll soon be swapping freeways. We'll be going on the A5 in the direction south, in the direction of Karlsruhe and Basel. You'll see a sign that Ausfahrt, that has led to a lot of confusion. That's why you can get signs made up of it. Ausfahrt, that's the exit, and some people have been confused. They see it so often they think it's actual town. That's why you get t-shirts, sweatshirts that say "Where the hell is Ausfahrt?" And this is true. We had, when I used to work in Frankfurt, we had someone come visit. I think it was actually from London, and they were constantly looking for the Ausfahrt until we informed them that means exit. So. will shortly be seen in the distance some of the buildings belonging to the airport.